I have to be more authentic and open and vulnerable than ever before.
Diana Massaro, CMO, Skyhigh Security that goes beyond just the specific functions of marketing.
Who are you going after? Who's the target that cares about what we have and has a problem and will be looking for solutions like ours? The sales leader and I have the exact same goal. We succeed and fail together.
How do you think about the team dynamics versus the individual person?
One of the things that we're looking at is for our individual contributors to be able to move up. I like crazy people. I always say like a little bit of mental illness is good. You know, like a little bit off the beaten path.
Then what is the difference between a great CMO and an average CMO?
Love that question.
Diana Massaro, CMO, Skyhigh Security. What I like about your job, as it's new and highly interesting, and because Skyhigh Security comes out of McAfee Enterprise, it's split off from it. You have mature clients, stable business, but yet you're new at the same time. You're assembling, you're building a team. You have a lot of challenges at once. So talk about the challenge you face now, both the challenge and the opportunity.
I have to go back just a little bit and tell you that I've only been at Skyhigh Security for 4 months. So I started at Skyhigh Security right when we were launching our brand. So we are what they call a carve out from McAfee. So we are the cloud security business of what McAfee Enterprise was. So now we are separate as Skyhigh Security. And I started, and 3 weeks later, we launched our brand. So it was absolutely a crazy 3 weeks of trying. When I started, we didn't have a logo. We didn't have a website. We didn't have an intranet. We didn't have messaging. We were going fast. So that was, first of all, just starting as a CMO, that was a very unique challenge. In that from day one, I started working like 15-hour days. It was crazy and really, really fun. And so now I'm in the place where I need to build a team. We need to really get our messaging solid, but we have several thousand customers and global, and we've got regular product releases. And so we have to keep sort of the trains running on time while we're also building a new company and new infrastructure and processes. And so I like to say this is my dream job, that I get to come in and build a team and a company and a brand from scratch, but it already has like 15 years of history and product market fit and passionate customers. And so it's a fun, hard, interesting challenge for me as a CMO.
Well, and how do you message both at the same time? Listening to you talk, you said we're stable, we're mature, we're in cybersecurity, so you got to be able to trust you. But we're new and different and maybe a better version of what you've seen before at the same time. So how do you think about that, message that? And I know you're a proponent of focusing on the product, not just the brand.
Right. The answer is it depends. So I don't always like to say that we came out of McAfee. It's important, I think, to understand the CMO challenge. So I think it's appropriate for this podcast. But there are prospects and customers out there who have not had a great experience with McAfee. And so if you say that, then they go, ooh, I don't know. And then there's others that say, oh, that's great. That's a big company. That means that I trust you. So we're trying to get this balance of saying we've been in business for 15 years. These are mature products. But because we separated, we now get to move faster. We need to get to focus more on innovation. We get to really move quicker when we see changes in the market or feedback from the market or customer issues, frankly. And so try to balance on you can trust us and we're new and innovative and you're going to see like great new things from us.
Well, and there's this notion of kind of the romantic view of like the tech company is like the garage, right? The originated, that's kind of the lore of it. It originates the garage, but now you're in kind of a big garage, right? You have like a lot of resources. You have, like you said, product releases. So how does thinking about the product, not just the brand, influence how you approach marketing now? Because a lot of people, if they're starting something new, the first thing they do is brand. They said, like, where are we rooting this brand? What are our pillars? What are the pain points of our customers? How do we solve that? You pay attention to all of that, but you actually say, don't forget about the product, even while you're, thinking about your overall brand.
Sort of jokingly, but not really, say the best way to build brand is to have a lot of passionate customers. So I don't think there's a huge divide between demand generation and brand building. So we had to do some brand building because we were launching a new company called Skyhigh Security that didn't exist before. But really, the best way to get your message out there is to understand what value you bring and who cares about that and what problems they have. And so I started my career, my first 15 years was in product management. I actually have a master's in statistics. Like I say that I'm like a math geek in a well-adjusted marketing like persona.
Okay. Okay.
So my first 15 years was product management, which meant that I cared deeply about who the user was and what they needed from our products and what problems we were solving and trying to match those two together. And so I bring that into the CMO and the marketing role. And so I always like to start with what's the problem out there? And so the problem for our customers is a bunch of data is moving to the cloud. And all of the old security tools they had, when it was on premise, where you could just put a firewall around it and then you could just access everything, that doesn't work anymore. And COVID slammed that so fast into these poor security and IT people who suddenly had to figure out, how do I enable everyone to work from home and put data in the cloud? And by the cloud, I mean just, Office 365, Salesforce, OneDrive, whatever. And how do you make sure that you still have security and you don't have crazy marketing people, putting a roadmap out on an insecure SaaS app? And so how do you, so that's the problem that we solve for our customers. And so I always make my marketing teams, and some of them hate me for this, especially when they're listening to this, I make them give me the corporate pitch within 30 days of starting with me. Because I want to make sure that everyone on my team, all the way down to administrative help, knows what problems we solve, who we are, and why we solve them, and how we solve them, and why we're unique. So let me just take that one step further. I am not a huge fan of cybersecurity marketing. There's 5,000 of us in Crunchbase. There's just lots of different companies. And I feel like marketers in general and cybersecurity say things like, we protect all your data, when we actually just do this little thing, like a little part of it. And so what I am passionate about is try to communicate that Skyhigh security is what we do is very, very important, but it is just a part of the security that you need. And here's the reasons that we are the best. And so if you look at our tagline, it's data aware. Data aware is the big thing. That means that we don't block all of the sites and the data. We make sure that the data that you care about, whether it's confidential data or it's your IP, that data stays safe. So we do it based on what type of document or file, or where are you and who are you? And is that behavior that you usually do every day, or do we see something different? We do it based on what the data is, and that's really different.
Well, and you're a veteran of cybersecurity marketing. You were at Armor Cybersecurity before. How do you market in a field where everyone kind of sounds the same? It's very hard to distinguish yourself. And people can even be saying, to your point, the same thing, but actually have vastly different things of what they actually do. And it just muddles up the messaging for everyone. How do you market in a field like that?
That's because it's not because people are trying to lie. It's that when you take that value proposition of any cybersecurity software and you start making it high enough so that it's comprehensive of the whole portfolio, you end up saying things. I joke around that cybersecurity marketers have just 10 words and we just like roll the dice and we just pick words and put them in different words.
What are the 10? What are some of the 10?
I don't know. Cloud native, seamless, flexible, data, cloud. I mean, it's just all the same.
So it's stuff that if it's used enough in sort of enough in kind of an imprecise way, that's just kind of jargon, it starts to lose all meaning to anyone. Like if you say it's seamless, what are people understanding by the fact that it's seamless? What does that mean?
Exactly. Easy? I don't know. I don't use that word. Like when I see that, I'm people laugh at me, but I'm like, no, that's marketing BS right there. You can't use that word. The way out of this is to be use case driven and to talk about examples of how you solve specific problems instead of only focusing on the highest level message. So what that means is it's a harder job for marketing because we have to get very specific about the target market and what problems we solve. You can only do this as a marketer if you know the customer, you understand the buying criteria and using criteria and really what you do and how your product works. So I realized really in this job, I branded myself in the last couple of months. I'm a product focused CMO. And I think every marketer in cybersecurity needs to be product focused.
Meaning, and what that means, because that's different than like you sometimes hear product led marketing, which is a little bit different when they say like, let's kind of like let the product do the marketing sort of for you, built into the design of the product. It kind of helps you market. A lot of SaaS apps are like that, right? Sort of naturally, kind of promotes itself. You're saying product focused marketing, which actually means let's focus on real use cases, real pain points, real solutions, and be precise in the language we use and very specific as opposed to general. And we're, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that would end up on your top 10 list.
Pick on anyone.
360 degree solution. We're turnkey for this. Where I'm trying to think of what else one could say, which you would, if I was on your team, you would be taking a red pen to all of that and crossing that out. Correct? I
was at RSA a few weeks ago and I just was walking around just like, oh, that's bad messaging. That one's bad messaging. Oh, that one's good messaging. Like going through all of the different vendors. I think the way that this kind of ends up being executed is that you start with, who are you going after? Like who's the target that cares about what we have and has a problem and will be looking for solutions like ours because we really solve a serious problem that we have in the industry. You say, where are these people going to be? Where do they look for information? And I've had countless calls with either prospects or people who aren't even prospects. And I say, where do you go to learn about security solutions when you have a problem? So number one, no surprise, is I go to my peers and my friends, right? So we need people to have a good experience with our software and then talk to other people. So you say, where are these people going to be? Okay, they're going to go to, I don't know, this show, or they're going to read this publication, or they may be doing this thing, or they only care about like small events with their peers. And then we plan our marketing campaigns. You don't say, hey, we're going to spend X gazillion dollars on trade shows. Now, which shows should we go to? We start with, who cares about this? And
another way I would sort of message it when we talk about on our team or for our clients is you first instead of me first. Like you, meaning you're the customer. We orient ourselves around you as opposed to saying it's me, which is like, here's my message. Here's what we're trying to say. Here's what we're trying to do. You're kind of reverse engineering that from them, correct?
I like the way you said that. I also say, like, let's start with the problem instead of the solution. Like, we never want technology out looking for a buyer, right? We want to be the company that solves real problems. And that's one of the reasons that I came to Skyhigh is our when I was interviewing our CEO, G. Rittenhouse, he's focused on protecting customers. And there's so much money being poured into cybersecurity that I felt like a lot of companies were just there because, oh, we can get 40% growth and then we can have great kids and we can all be rich. And he didn't talk to me about that at all. He talked about what the real problems are with securing data in the cloud and how we could really help companies, enterprises be safer.
Well, and as you're trying to as you say, have everyone on your team get that corporate pitch down within 30 days. How do you do it? Because you have the added challenge of, there's a lot of companies that are in kind of fast growth that might be hiring, but you're kind of starting from like standstill because you didn't exist as an entity before March. Now you're growing. I know, the size of your team is growing. So how do you start thinking about, CMO as a leader of people, as a leader of a team? You want them to get that kind of be able to explain to others your reason for being, why you do what you do, how you do it. But how do you do it when there might not be a whole kind of culture built up that kind of reinforces this, right? When you're kind of starting from standstill, you have resources, but then you've got to get moving fast.
I mean, that's part of why this is my dream job. Like, I love this. And it's worse than that because we don't have an office. We're all remote. And the CEO is new and his executive team is new. My leadership team is new and we're adding a bunch of people. So I jokingly say it's like riding a unicycle while spinning plates. And then someone also is trying to light you on fire. Like, it's fun and a little scary and crazy. And, it's a very challenging job. So
sure.
The situation that I walked in is I had some people on the team when I started, like people who had been dedicated to the cloud business at McAfee. So, for example, product marketing was already in place. But after that, I had to basically create an empty org chart based on my budget and then have people opt in. So I did have some people who said, I want to work at Skyhigh, who were already part of that McAfee enterprise, and got some amazing people. And then we've been recruiting like crazy. And I've got quite a few people right now who have accepted and who will be starting in the next 6 weeks, which is a really interesting challenge because my team, based on the size today, it's going to grow 44% in the next 6 weeks. And we're looking at how do we build a culture, especially when I haven't even been able to meet everybody in person. And so I've really been thinking about this problem. How do you quickly build trust and culture in a remote environment? Because that's what I'm in. And what I found is I have to be more authentic and open and vulnerable than ever before. Because I want you to keep going, but that's an interesting word because the idea in a cybersecurity company being vulnerable, it's a word you don't hear a lot, or you hear it like one of the things we solve, but talk about what you mean and specifically why that helps you with leadership and why that would, I think to your sort of phrase, kind of build trust faster. Because if you don't have a personal relationship with someone and assume the best and have empathy for their position, then it's really hard to have conflict. And that's really what we're about, is taking good ideas and figuring out who's the best and how do we work together. And marketing's, well, you obviously know this, but marketing's one of these functions where you have a lot of duplication of function. Like everything that happens goes across the whole team. So having trust and being able to handle conflict is essential in marketing to be able to function well. And
you're talking about then trying to, in some ways, it sounds like lead by example, because you want people to be more open with you. Therefore, you need to be more open. So if they see that from their leader, they know it's okay. And I'm not going to be penalized for talking openly about my issue, my problem, whether that's at work or that's at home because we're working from home and I got crazy childcare issues and now I'm trying to deal with that. Is that correct? Is that what you want people to be open about that?
So the way, like, for example, I'll just give you a simple example. My first week or second week, we had a full company meeting. And G. Rittenhouse, our CEO, said, okay, Diana, I'm going to introduce you and you can put a couple of slides up. So the slides that I put up was not about what a badass CMO I am. I put up, here's my family. I have 3 teenagers. I have a dog. I've been married for over 20 years. Like, I put that up so that people started to get to know me as a human first. And so I send a weekly email out to the whole company. I put the goofiest stuff in there about me. Like, I just put a LinkedIn post out. That was probably my most popular one ever, of me in a unicorn onesie hugging our head of people. Like, that was the big picture. So, I mean, that's vulnerability. I also tell my team, I make mistakes every single day. When I make them, I tell people, hey, I messed this up and I did that. And then because of this, and then I found out this information. I'll change my mind, but I'll tell people why. So it opens up that, like, it's okay to fail and it's okay to do, like, that psychological safety. It's really impossible to perform well if you don't feel safe making mistakes. And so I try to, number one, tell everybody about the mistakes I made. And number two, if I get some constructive criticism, either from my team or someone else, I tell people about it so that people are more open giving me that feedback. Like, this is all humans, you know?
Sure. And this is in contrast. It's interesting hearing you say that. I know you've spoken about in the past how when you were interviewing for roles before, earlier in your career, you would do the opposite of this, right? You would try to not bring up your family or any of that. Why was that? And why did that change? And what changed your perspective on that?
So when I was in graduate school, I went to Stanford, so I was in Silicon Valley, and they had this saying that there was a drag coefficient, and a drag coefficient, it was in the early 90s. I'm old. And a drag coefficient was you had a spouse, a commute, or kids, and they would put like numbers on it. And so,
well, and it's dragging what? Just dragging your performance,
your time in the office.
Your time. Like, you're not gonna be able to do as much to the company because it's a zero-sum game. The assumption is what they're saying, and that the more you have of this other stuff, the more it's a horrible term, being dragged back because of this. So that was part of the culture of just kind of leaving Stanford and being a high achieving place with people and going to the workforce. But this is stuff you're going to hold you back. And you're, earlier on in your career, you don't want to be held back. So you're going to be like, no one's going to know about the so-called drag coefficient I may have.
And then I started in product management, which there weren't a lot of women. And that was the time when we were like, okay, women, we were still wearing like nylons pantyhose to the office. Like, it was in the olden days. We all felt, I don't know, I won't say we all, I felt like I had to behave in the way that sort of my male counterparts would. And I wouldn't share that I had a family when I interviewed. I wouldn't talk about that I had kids because I was worried that would communicate my drag coefficient. And then as I got older, and I think the industry realized that we need diversity, and that includes ages and genders and sexual orientation, all these things, we're getting more open. And now, first conversation, I talk about these things. And I want people to be open because we work better when we support the whole life of our employees, because everyone has stuff that goes on. People get sick, people have kid problems, people have spouse problems, whatever. And it's not separate from work. It's all together. And so by me sharing my challenges and what's going on with my family and my life, it allows my team to also share that with me. And then we get a better result. And it's a more cohesive team with more empathy and more trust. And it feels more like a work family where you feel supported.
Well, and do you think that because of where we are now with the pandemic, meaning there's more remote work there's less in-person connection, although many, tech firms are now trying to get people back. And certainly there's other fields, like I'd say finance is one where they're like, no, you need to be in the office. But would you say this is more important, just as important, I guess, or less important than before this, given that you're not having as much interface, face-to-face interaction that you would have had otherwise?
I think it's the same importance. It's just harder to do remote. Because if you're in the office and someone has a personal problem, you go into a little conference room and you can really feel the empathy coming from the other person, and you can, there's sometimes tears in the office. Well, I've never had tears on a Zoom call. So you can get the same depth when it's remote. And my team is spread out all over the world. I mean, I have people in India and Italy and Spain and Ireland and all over the US, Canada. So we're never gonna be all together all the time. And so I think I have to try harder to create this culture.
I see. And what do you say to let's say maybe someone else who's in the C-suite with you, who's skeptical of this, and that might not be at Skyhigh, but let's say they're a very bottom line driven person, right? They're like, we want to grow, we need these numbers to go up, we're in a competitive, cutthroat business. How is what you're saying, that sort of being more open, being more vulnerable, how does that translate to like business bottom line for someone who's skeptical that says, I just want my numbers to hit my numbers and my growth, I don't care how I do it? This sort of sounds warm and fuzzy to me. What do you say to them?
You mean like every other company I've ever worked in? Skyhigh? Okay. Yes. I mean, I get people, sometimes when people join my team, I call them beaten puppies, because they've had managers who just tell them, go do this. And it's very hierarchical, and there's not that trust. And that so many of us work without psychological safety. Like, it's more common than this approach. And what I found in this approach is that I get, my job, I joke around that my job is just hiring really, really smart people and recognizing good ideas. And if they can't communicate the good idea because they don't feel safe, then you're not going to get the best out of them. If I were making all the decisions in marketing, we'd probably go out of business. I mean, it's the team that works together, because I've got all of these people with this great experience, and we get all of these diverse views in that help us succeed. And so I would say you don't get as good of results if you don't build this kind of team. And I feel really, really passionate about this. And you know what? I can tell it works, because I get incredibly smart A players who want to follow me to jobs. And so it's fun. And I got to bring some of these to Skyhigh, and I've got a couple that are accepted in other groups, and it's great. Like, I'm proud of the people who I've had on my teams.
And what do you do then? What do you look to for each of the people on your team? How do you know if you need to make sure that one, like, they don't leave, that you retain them? If you need to make sure that they have the sort of psychological security that you said, what do you look for in the individual people to make sure? And then how do you do it if you're concerned about someone? What do you do in the context of a high performing marketing team?
So I'm gonna answer a slightly different question. You said, how do you retain them? And I'm gonna give you my view on this. I don't. So my goal is for my employees to grow and be successful. It's not that I don't care if they stay on my team, but I don't. Like, if they want to go to another role in the company, I will 100% support that. If I don't have the job for them to grow to the next point in their career and they need to go outside the company, I've helped people do that too. So I've decided that I make a commitment to the human and the person. And then I help them with how we grow their career. I find it makes everything so much clearer. And the impact of that is that people want to stay with me. So I know it's a little counterintuitive, but I really think it works.
Well, and someone like, let's say like, Reid Hoffman, who, now is an investor, but, was kind of famous for LinkedIn and being the CEO of LinkedIn. One of the things he talks about is this alliance that is formed between the company and a person. And what that alliance is that, the person signs on and says, I agree to sort of put my time and effort and skills into advancing the company forward. But then the company has to also say, we agree to do what we can to help you move forward in your career for where you're going to go. And that the best companies, especially with critical people, form this alliance. So is that some of what you're saying too? Because if you look at their holistically where they're trying to get to, very few people are going to stay in a job for life. Most people are going to shift, even during this, I guess, this time of the Great Resignation. There was a lot of shifting. So you're saying it might just be better strategically overall to center yourself around helping the person get where they go. And in fact, that might in fact be the thing that causes them to stay.
The other thing is people will come back. So I was looking for a specific role and I went to LinkedIn and I saw someone who used to work for me a long time ago, 18 years ago. And I contacted him and he's one of the people who's going to start on my team. People will come back to the same company. I tell people when they leave, if somebody says, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else, I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. If it's not what you want or your career progresses and you want to come back, just let me know. And they sometimes do. And you get these wonderful people who then have gone out and had different experiences and come back and they're even stronger. And so I find that it's like business karma. They come,
sure.
It comes back. And I didn't always feel this way. And by the way, your quotes on Reid Hoffman, like obviously he's thought much more about this than I have. I'm still just doing what I think is right without sort of thinking all the way through. But I do know that I can't be successful without great people. And the way to recruit and retain great people is to treat them holistically with respect and trust them and listen to them and understand that they're people first and part of their experiences work.
And then how do you think about building a team? Because I think it's an interesting use case at Skyhigh, because you've been split off from another company. There is some legacy there. You're bringing people in, and you've got to make out this org chart. You mentioned that you're increasing by 44% in the next 6 weeks, just in terms of headcount. So how do you think about that org chart and the context of people fitting into that? Meaning you need a certain number of really strong individual contributors who are just like have great skills. You need a certain number of people who are managers that can manage and kind of direct us and align us and get us in the vision. You can't be all independent contributors. You need others who are people who are kind of the glue between things that just allow
connectors.
Connectors. That's a good way. The glue people. That's a better term that you said. Connectors as well. Yeah. You have to do all that, and you have to build this, and you have to build this quickly. So, how do you think about that org chart for someone that has to kind of build one from scratch or really change one in a short amount of time?
Love that question. So I was super fortunate. So when I came in, I said, okay, the first thing I have to do is I have to build my leadership team. So I had, boxes and 6 boxes, and a few of them were already filled with amazing people who had already been at McAfee. Some of them only a year. Some of them, I have 2 leaders who had been at McAfee 18 and 19 years.
Okay, and when you say 6 boxes, why 6? Is there like divisions? How is it organized? Is there channels? Is there
the marketing function? So I did corporate communications, and analyst relations is very important to us. That's a box, and demand gen.
Okay, so these are like traditional channels that you're going to market in. There's going to be leaders for each of those.
Yep. And so I was lucky that there were some natural leaders that either opted in or were already there. And then where I still had open boxes, I pulled from my network. And I got those within probably 6 weeks of starting this job. I had all of my leadership positions filled.
Okay, so you've got the heads of each of the channels.
Then they had to go staff their teams. And that's where we're seeing all of the other people coming in. So I've been, we're helping recruit that. So, I kind of tell them like, hey, my team's staffed. What about yours? And so then they have to go and find those people. But I hold my leadership and my direct reports responsible for their functions. And so they need to go find the best people they can. Some of those are going to come internally, and some of those are going to come from my network or their networks. Most has been done through referrals. Most of the people that we are hiring are through referrals, or so one of us has worked with them before.
And when you're building a team like this, are you just evaluating each person on the merits of the person? Here's our role. Do they fit that role? Or are you thinking about how these people kind of fit together? Meaning like, this person who has this very, quantitative background, this would be great paired up with this other person who brings something different. Or at this point, you just got to hire, you got 6 weeks, you just got to get people who can fill the role. How do you think about the team dynamics versus the individual person?
Well, so because a lot of it is referral, it's easier for us to know that they're good and they're going to fit because we've got, we have experience with them to some extent. We're still, so let's just give like a role, like someone to manage our customer programs. So our customer marketing manager, that's a pretty, again, in marketing, it's a pretty defined role of what that person's going to do and how they're going to grow that. So one of the things that we're looking at is for our individual contributors to be able to move up. So we are a little bit sort of over hiring or trying to get people that we know can grow with the organization, because I expect that we will grow and increase the marketing staffing over time. And I want to always be able to hire in at the bottom and then provide career advancement for the people that we have. So that's one of the things we're looking for. I have this thing called the lunch test. So when you interview someone, if you don't want to go to lunch with them, you shouldn't hire them. So there's a little bit of likability. It doesn't mean that they're socially well-adjusted, because I like crazy people. I would say like a little bit of mental illness is good. Like a little bit off the beaten path.
Okay, sure.
I do have the lunch test, and I've had it in the past. I've had managers come and say, yeah, they have great skills. Here's what they said. And I said, well, did they pass the lunch test? Would you go to lunch alone with them? And they're like, no. I'm like, you can't hire them.
I see. Well, and interestingly, this is a different lunch test, but Thomas Edison, obviously famous inventor, was famous for his lunch test, because what he would actually do with people to hire when he was hiring scientists was he would actually, they'd order lunch and he would observe how they ate their lunch. And actually, if anyone salted their food or added some kind of spice to it without trying it first, he wouldn't want to hire them. The reason, because they're in his line of work, they're making assumptions about the food and they're not actually testing and trying. And he wanted people who didn't make assumptions. So there you go. Different lunch tests, but now you can look and see, are they putting the pepper on that? And then you can make a hiring decision.
I have my own test like that. If you don't have excellent writing ability and good grammar, then you won't get hired. So
no matter what the position, even if it's a marketing position that has nothing to do with writing and grammar.
No, it doesn't matter. Everyone in marketing has to write. And so sometimes I do encourage some email communication back and forth with people so we can see. One intern candidate once responded from her phone, and she didn't proof it well enough. She didn't get the job. And the next year she came back in and she said, I'm going to try this again. And she was wonderful. We actually ended up hiring her. But I have bought tests like that. So if you're applying for a job at Skyhigh Marketing, careful what you write.
Be careful what, right. Okay, absolutely. And what is, maybe to end on, what do you recommend? I mean, we've touched on some different themes here. We touched upon product focused marketing and really kind of understanding in detail use cases and what you're trying to solve, maybe from the perspective of the actual customer or user. We've talked about the importance of, in your kind of phrasing, leading by example, setting up a culture that encourages people to kind of be open and share, as opposed to being closed and trying to kind of project a good impression, trying to do the opposite of that. What do you say? And we also even talked about in cybersecurity the challenge of jargon, marketing speak that doesn't mean anything, that just kind of gets built up over time when everyone uses it. So, if you were going to sort of encourage the next generation of marketers, someone who's maybe going to be a CMO in 5 years, what should they be doing now? How should they be approaching their careers, job interviews, their skills to be set up for 5 years from now, given all of this?
So the first thing is to understand what is the difference between a VP of marketing and a CMO. And let me tell you my personal view of that. So VP of marketing knows all the marketing functions, like how do you run trade shows and measure that? And how do you get messaging out? And how do you do all these? A CMO looks at the company strategically and understands where the industry is going, where the competitors are going, and has that higher level being able to really talk to industry analysts and be part of having a strong voice in the direction of the company, whether that's, should we do M&A? Should we look at this type of value proposition? What if we went into this market? So that real voice on the executive team, that's to me what differentiates a CMO versus a VP of marketing. So I would say the best thing is to get as much experience in various disciplines as you can. One of the things that makes me an incredibly strong marketer is I have been in product management, professional services. I was CEO for a couple of years. So I understand how the company works. I understand financials. I understand the inner workings of a company and the relative importance or not importance of marketing. So the first thing is get as much experience as you can in various functions. And the second thing is start reading, start trying to understand a little bit more about the industry and the customers, get as much customer and prospect feedback as you can. I would advise someone who wants to be a CMO to be fearless about diving in and understanding as much as they can about the business. So go read analyst reports, understand what's happening in the industry, get as much customer prospect. Even I talk to people who aren't even our customers and try to understand their decision-making. Like as much experience as you can get to be able to think strategically that's how you're going to get that C-level position, probably in not just marketing, but annual.
And if the difference between a VP of marketing and a CMO is that sort of perspective on the whole business that goes beyond just the specific functions of marketing, then what is the difference between a great CMO and an average CMO?
Results. I say I'm laughing, but it's true. Like if you, a great CMO helps drive success in the business. Like that's it. The sales leader and I have the exact same goal. We succeed and fail together. So a great CMO helps the business succeed. That's it. It's repeated. I know I'm very tactical at the end.
No, well, very well said. Diana Massaro, CMO, Skyhigh Security, and also a bit of inspiration for anyone out there who is soon to be a CMO or is an existing CMO of the role. And I love what you said about sort of impacting the overall directions and fortunes of the business in a way that goes beyond just the tactical execution of marketing. So thank you so much for joining Top CMO.
Yeah, that was fun.
According to Diana Massaro, CMO of Skyhigh Security, don't be timid, be fearless. When you're new to a business, find out as much as you can about how the business operates, not just about specific marketing functions. Read the reports, do your research, understand the industry you are in and where it is headed. Be absolutely selective in your hiring and become a champion of team growth and the individual careers of each team member. Remember, we're all human first. So choose people for your team that you'd want to go into battle with. But before you go into the foxhole, you've got to want to go to lunch first. Align your marketing objectives with your revenue objectives, and you'll always have a seat at the table. Good CMOs create good marketing. Great CMOs accomplish great business objectives. For Top CMO, I'm Ben Kaplan.